Welcome everybody to the alternate PanTerraVida studios in our other room. I'm Travis Nolan, House of Desing, and I'm here today with Andrea Helen, House of Teal, the co-founder of PanTerra, and I'm really excited to introduce her today. She's going to go into a brief background of her life and inner work processes and working with various mentors, and it's going to be a great conversation.
Great, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, Andrea, so let's start at the beginning. What brought you into this work? Let's start with kind of childhood and give us a nice broad stroke brush of what brought you to this moment.
Well, it took me a while to figure out, but I realized that when I came into this existence that I was fairly, I know it's not kosher to say awake, but I was fairly aware of what was going on here. And I would say that I had a lot of cues when I was very young, just little moments when something would interject and remind me of who I am and what I needed to prepare myself for. And I had quite a series of mentors and people who were very extraordinary, that I know that I had made contractual agreements when I was not in this body, that they would remind me of who I am and what I came here to do. So I had a very unusual childhood. I had a very unusual growing up life. My parents were extremely confounded by me and mostly overwhelmed by who I was. I've told this story before. It's in the archives of PanTerra that when I was very little, I went to a church with my grandmother, and this man had come to town to basically, he was a spiritualist or something. It was in 1963, and she wanted to see him. She wasn't that religious, but we went to this church. And he was talking, and then all of a sudden he turned and he pointed at me and said, "Who's this young child here?" And everybody turned around and looked at me. He said, "She's going to change the economic system of this world." Which was pretty unusual back then, because nobody knew what that meant, and my grandmother was very like, what's going on here? It just seemed like this commercial break. And then he went back onto this stuff. And so from that point on, I tried to discover what an economic system was. I planned to go to university, and I took economics, and I still didn't really have an idea of that, but it all made sense as to where I was going. So there are those moments in my life where I feel like it opened up. I got a message so that I would go, oh, right, in case I got lost here, and got lost like a lot of people do. They forget why they're here, and they get consumed by the craziness in this world. So I had that direction. And from a very early age, I started off with Lobsang Rampa, and I tried to learn how to astral project. Wasn't successful at that, but then at a very early age, I read all the Castaneda books. They were very profound for me. I really took it in. Especially the part about the parasite, that there was this thing watching. And I always had this feeling of being watched. And I always remember lying in bed at night and looking out the window, wondering who is watching me. So that sounds kind of paranoid, but it wasn't really paranoia. It was just, I understood the nature of what we are dealing with and who I was in the picture. There was parts of life that kind of came in and out of, just being a kid and all that kind of stuff. But my household was very strict, and I would really upset my parents a lot, because we would go to different things and people would say stuff, and then I'd interject and say, "But you said this," and my dad would give me one of those evil eye looks, and then get upset with me when we left and got in the car. And he's like, "I told you not to say that." And so I was always kept under wraps and tried to, you have to be like this, you can't say that, you can't do this. And that made me even more defiant in my being. It actually assisted me, because then I became really kind of like on point.
Yeah, it's kind of like a pressure cooker, right? Where you know who you are.
Yeah.
Kind of having that inner knowing, coming into this really strange reality that we find ourselves in, and having parents who are very in the box, then with that desire to break out of the box.
But one thing that I always knew was that I was here to make a difference, that I was here not like other people who are on some kind of spiritual trip or religious trip, that I knew that my presence and my being could make a difference for other people and for this construct that we're in, right? That there was something about me that I had practiced and practiced and practiced on some other plane or whatever, that I would come and introduce, very little concepts, but that they could make an impact. So when I left home very early, because I didn't get along with my father, and I lived on my own when I was 16 years old. When I was a little bit older, I went on a trip to Central America, and I went to all the pyramids, and I went to Chichen Itza and Tulum and Tikal, and I knew that I was pulled there to experience something. And that just really upset my parents. Like, I left before they knew. I got my own passport. I just knew that I had to be there. This is when I was very young, and I went to Palenque, and that's where the, what was his name? Pokol Votan's tomb was. And at the time, it wasn't guarded or anything. There was no, now there's bars and things, and you can't even go in there. But I went in there. I had done some ongos, which are mushrooms.
Ongos, yeah.
And I went inside the Palenque thing, and I laid on top of it. And in that, it's called, I think, the Temple of Inscriptions. And, his impression was on, that's Pokol Votan's impression was on the tomb, and he looks like he's in a spaceship or something. And I had this really intense experience of sort of multidimensional, leaving my body, going out in space, having mathematics come at me. Just something was downloaded, let's just say, into that. Are you going to ask something there? Okay. So that was an experience. So I had these different, I really wanted to go because of my Carlos Castaneda readings, and I had this thing that I wanted to meet somebody like Don Juan, or, that didn't occur, but I had that experience. I'm just really going through these experiences pretty fast, but they all amount to something. When I was 21 years old, I was with a friend, and she had told me that she had just come out of the EST training, which was done by Werner Erhard, and he created it. He had an experience, if anybody doesn't know that he was on the Golden Gate Bridge, and he had an experience of we're all one or something, this is it. We're here to make this a better world. A world that works for everyone with no one and nothing left out was his slogan. So I went and did the training. There's about 400 people in it. It's like this 4-day, 2-weekend thing that's very impactful.
And what about time frame? Is this in the 70s?
This is 79. If anybody wants to know about that, you could probably read about it. It was extremely profound at the time. Like, nobody had done anything like Werner had done. There's a movie made about it with Burt Reynolds, and it's kind of a farcical movie, but there is a moment in the training at the very end when they do this thing and you're supposed to get it. And the whole thing of what there was to get was that there was nothing to get. And it works you up to that. And you're called all kinds of things and you do all these processes. And during that moment, I left my body, but I didn't experience leaving my body. I just experienced being over the entire group of people and watching it all. And I had this experience that was so profound, so, okay, I got it. Okay, like I didn't get it because there was nothing to get, but I got it. I got that I didn't get it. Right after that, I started to assist at the S Center, and it was quite apparent to everybody that I was an incredible producer. I did this thing called the Guest Seminar Leaders Program, and I was a candidate for that, and I became that, and I was given all these jobs, for lack of better words, to go and talk in front of people. And I had like the highest statistics of Werner was very, very emphatic on statistics, and I always had very high statistics. So immediately they wanted me to go on staff, and I was only 22 years old. So that was interesting because I was with a lot of adults and stuff, but I was like a trained monkey, sort of, like produce. And that's it. The whole thing about the world was producing results, because Werner's whole thing was the percentage that you produce is the percentage of yourself that's there.
Yeah, real world results.
Yeah, and so if I did 4 out of 10 people, I was 40% myself and in my body, whatever, that's kind of the equation. So I was always given really big groups of people to go and talk in front of. They had this thing called the special guest seminar once a month, and there'd be like 200-300 people, and I'd always get really amazing results. But the reason why was because I knew how to be myself. And I had one goal in life, which was that I want this to be a better world, and Werner put it out there. I spent time with Werner and Buckminster Fuller. I went down to San Francisco, and I met all the people who were on staff, and and I was sort of like the child prodigy or something like that. But that's what interested me. The only thing that really interested me was how much difference can I make with people. And I learned a certain way of being, which I know confounds people, but it has worked on numerous occasions where I would get extremely direct with people, and they would know that I could see them, and then they would make a movement on that, like they would register in the training or whatever. Some people would be scared of me and run very, very far away.
Well, let's address that. You were very, let's say, hypersensitive to people's energies, to smells, to sounds.
Yes, well, you live with me, you know what it's like.
Well, let's address that. Like, what allows you, do you think, or when did you notice that, or maybe you can describe how you experienced that, where you just know something about somebody or the environment, and you can just feel into it?
Well, I can just really read people. I get inside their experience. I have this great compassion for people, but I also know that they're their own worst enemies as well. And when I was at Est, I really developed this way of being, and I was kind of notorious for it, but they loved it because I was real. That was so they would always ask me to do the things because they wanted the statistic. The people who were there who wanted to look good for Werner wanted me there. The people that wanted, more people to be enrolled, they'd want me there. And actually, I was just telling this story. I just remembered it the other day that once I was in Toronto and did a big guest seminar, and this woman came in off the street. And she was a psychic, and she was, 50s, 60s. And she sat down and she was looking at me. And after it was over, she came up to me and she said, I got pulled in off the street because I wanted to see you. Like, I wanted to see what you were doing. Mm-hmm. Because whatever it is that you're doing, it's really real, and you're here for this world. Mm. And her name was Charlotte, and I also had a reading with her, which I won't talk about in this session, but it was very profound. And so it's like that was like one of the windows that opened when Charlotte showed up, right? Mm-hmm. It was like I had put things out there for the universe or whatever to open the window to remind me why I'm here. Because while I was doing that, there was all this other stuff going on. Like there'd be strange people working at Est who had different goals, let's say.
Agendas, goals.
Yeah. There was a lot of men there who were always hitting on me. And actually one guy he was actually a famous trainer of Werner's. He attacked me one time in a hotel room, and I actually whacked him and got out of the room. And that seemed so bizarre to me because what are you doing? Like, don't you have some boundaries and stuff? So life was going on where everybody was, doing their thing and lies and manipulation and whatever. And I had these goals, right? So it was kind of a duality of, there's me doing my thing and I have to deal with the insanity of the world.
Right.
And, and the whole thing of Werner and Bucky Fuller was they started this thing called the Hunger Project, and it was about ending world hunger, and they had all the statistics about hunger, and I got really involved in that. And we became part of the United Nations at that time, and so there was all these real goals, but then there was also the strangeness of what people were doing behind the scenes too. So, and for anybody who doesn't know about Werner Erhard, he was an extraordinary being. I think he's still alive, but he also had his daughter go on CBS television.
Well, he didn't have it happen, right? Someone else had it happen.
His spirit did.
His spirit might have.
And his daughter was really pissed off because he had basically abandoned her, and she made up this story, at least that's what he said, that he had molested her, which in the 80s, that was unheard of. It was like the first time ever something like that went on CBS, and the whole organization tanked because of that. And so that's when I left, which was actually a really good thing for me. But I had that thing of, I had the free license to be totally myself, to say whatever I wanted to say to anybody, because I was given that license to do that, because I was good at it. And even many years after I'd worked at Est, I'd be on the street or on a bus or something, and people come up and say, "Do you remember me?" And I go, "No, what did I do?" And they say, "Well, you said this and this and this to me, and you know what? You were right." And I did the training, and my life's different, and thank you. And I just wanted to thank you. And that's another window of somebody coming in, telling me you're on the right path, because I was negotiating through a crazy world too. I knew I had a purpose. I knew I was doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the S training was all of these really strict principles about self-honesty, self-performance, integrity, and that's what you brought, and running into a lot of
people that didn't have that. And I had to always wrangle with them, and that was strange for me. And I was not naive, I was still in my early 20s. I was pretty naive, but I had a purpose, and a lot of people tried to rock me off that. So from that point on, I had a roommate named Barry who had been in Est, and I was kind of I was at a loss as to what to do, because I had been there for 4 years. There wasn't like anywhere else I could go with that experience and say, oh, well, I used to confront people on how wacky their lives were. Or I used to stand up in front of people to share my transformation. See, this was all about transformation. I wasn't trying to sell people real estate or whatever. I was the whole thing of Warner's premise was share your experience, share your transformation, and other people would feel that. And that's what I became masterful at doing. And yet there was no place for me to go in the world. So I was kind of depressed. And then Barry said to me, you should go and see this woman named Nan. And she's amazing. She is nothing like anything on this planet. She's not, she's not really psychic. She just knows. There's a quantitative difference there. So phoned her up. She only lived a few blocks from me. She opened the door and immediately started laughing hysterically. And she said, I was in the training when you were there. And I said, oh, really? And she said, yeah, you think you're such a big shit, don't you? Or something like that. And I said, well, yeah. She said, well, you're not. I'm not going to tell you why. Sit down. And actually, I had met my equal and more. And Nan was not like any being. I know. I just found out that she died. She was from Thailand. She was considered a bodhisattva in Thailand. All the monks used to come and have sessions with her. She'd go back to Thailand. They do sessions. Anybody who go see, I had friends that I'd had go see her. Whenever they came out of the session, they were just completely, what was that? What happened? Because she had this like piercing right through to your being. So basically, it was like being the extrovert on the stage to where I went totally inward, totally went into this bizarre place of learning about my ancestors. She knew everything about my ancestors like everybody else. She went through back in time, what happened with them, why you have certain attributes or personalities, and she had this whole mapping of things. It's very complicated. So I was in this process with her of clearing all the ancestral karma, all the history of the parents and all their weird habits. I remember I got up to about 700 with my mom and 600 with my dad or something like that. We used to work on them weekly. Had weekly sessions with her. Very, very deep, profound, weird stuff. And a group of people that we all met all the time, and they were my friends sort of, but there was always a lot of conflict and stuff coming up, and then she would deal with that and say, that's because your grandfather was here last night and he hates his grandfather or whatever. It was very interesting and very, very profound. But then one day, Nan, who was never shy about speaking her mind or saying, she said something in a group, and this guy and this was a guy who had a lot of problems or didn't like being told anything, and he grabbed this very solid glass thing, and he took it and threw it at her. And just as it was going to go by her head, she went like that, and it went smash. And she just got up and went, that's it, I'm done. See you guys all, I'm going to go. She ended up selling tofu or something. So that was the end of that time. And just like another window of, okay, I did go to Thailand. I went in and I went to a monastery that she was very good friends with the monks, and we do 30-day Vipassana retreats, silent retreats. So it was a very deep inward, as opposed to when I was out outward in the S thing. So that was over. Did a lot of things in between then. I met this woman named Tachi Ren, who is a psychic who's...
What's about the time frame now?
Okay, this is about 1988, 89. This woman named Tachi Ren, I found out about her through a friend. She was from Denver. I lived in Vancouver. I went and met her with a group of people. It's a long story. It was kind of a spiritual, weird channeling. Everybody thought they were from different planets and star systems. And when I walked into the room, I was the last person to get there. And then she said, "Oh, you're here. Oh, we were all waiting for you. Like, we didn't know if you were going to get here." I had to drive all the way to California from Vancouver. And she stopped everybody. She said, "This woman is a void dancer," which I had no idea what that was. And then I learned that over the next week, that that I came from the void, which now I kind of get more of a picture of that from the chief thing and the darkness of the mother and all that kind of stuff. Right. But at the time, in their belief system, there was different star systems and stuff, and I came from some system that was totally black and the void and everything. And then these two other people showed up, or they had shown up, and then it's a long story, but they were also void dancers. And she said that there was only 3 of us on the planet. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's accurate, but something happened when we were there. It was a very incredible experience. And there was a man there who was psychic and whatever, and he knew Ken. And so when I got home to Vancouver, this guy, Gary Batten was his name, said, "You really should meet this guy named Ken." And he's hosting this Drunvalo Melchizedek guy up near Bellingham, Washington, and that was very close to Vancouver. So phoned up Ken. We ended up talking on the phone all the time and told him all my experiences and stuff. And then he said, "Why don't you come down to Bellingham? I'm going to go look for a place for the Drunvalo workshop." And Ken's told this story many times of when I walked up to his door and knocked on the door, and then we both just looked at each other and went, "Oh no, it's you."
Yeah, you just know. And I don't know if you want to get into it, but there was this code word. That someone told you that if this person says this code word, then they're the one, and there you are, Ken, and you and Ken sitting in a restaurant, and it's some word nobody would say. It's
so,
like a name.
It's Corlan was the word. So actually, the day before I met Ken, that I actually met him in the physical, there was a woman who worked with Tachi and Gary. Her name was Lori Hogan, and she was a spiritual channel and all that kind of stuff, and she wanted to do a reading with me. So she said, you're going to meet your life partner within the next 6 months, she said. And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, you guys got a lot of work to do, and if the code word is Corlan, right?"
Yeah. Who says that?
Nobody. so then, it was so weird. So the next day when I met Ken, we got on a ferry. We went to Orcas Island, which was where the Drunvalo workshop was going to be, and we went to visit the woman whose house it was. It was a big geodesic dome, and Ken and I went out for dinner, and I said, "Have you ever met Lori Hogan?" And he goes, "I've heard of her through Gary and that, and I know she's really good." And I said, "Well, I just had a reading with her yesterday," and she said I was going to meet my soulmate or whatever, however she expressed it, in the next 6 months. And Ken said, "Interesting," and then I forget exactly how it happened, but I said, "Well, when I meet him, the word is, or Coralon or something.
You said it?
No, he
Or
said
he
it.
said
I
it.
forget how it happened.
Oh, he
actually.
had a reading with her.
Yeah, that was
That's
it.
what
That's
happened.
it. Yeah,
He said it, and then you kind of choked on your food a little bit, like
I'm more than
because you heard it.
more than choked. It was like this fish, and I had a big fish bone, and I started coughing and got it stuck in my throat. And people in the restaurant were all, and I got up and I was trying to cough up this, and I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Coralon." And anyway, it was.
But he didn't have a reading with her before that? I'm confused.
You know, I can't remember. I'd have to ask Ken.
Oh, okay, that's all right.
You know, you guys, I'm in my late 60s. I got kind of
Yeah.
memory loss or whatever, but it was just a really weird moment.
Mm-hmm.
Then we went to, then Droomvelo came like a couple of weeks later. Ken was hosting it, and I went to do the workshop. And of course, a lot of people here will know about Droomvelo and the you know, the tetrahedron and
at the time you guys were really getting into that sacred geometry stuff.
And all that kind of stuff.
We have a new understanding of today.
Well, I didn't really get into it because when I first walked in there, I got the weirdest feeling from Droomvelo. And he couldn't look at me.
Yeah.
He just couldn't, and he was very friendly with Ken and stuff, but he just had this aversion to me. And I was there, I think it was like 4 days or something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ken and I camped under his window, outside of his window at this woman's place in Orcas Island. And in the middle of the night, I heard this fight going on and crying. And Droomvelo brought his wife, who's now his ex-wife, obviously, and she was 8.5 months pregnant, and they got in this fight, and because she went into labor, and he yelled at her, "Don't you dare! You stop it now! Stop being in labor! Don't you dare have that baby here!" And then they got in this fight, and then I heard her crying and screaming, actually, and he actually grabbed her and broke one of her fingers. So here I was, this is another Andrea thing, which is I was a witness to that. I heard it, I saw it. I knew there was something that I just didn't like about him. I didn't like the whole Melchizedek thing. Something just didn't seem right to me. And the next day she came in and she had a big splint on her finger. I'm thinking, a woman who's like 8.5 months pregnant, and he was like talking about love and spinning, and everybody's blowing their Merkabahs,
thing,
and they're one you spin this way and one you spin that way, and
counter-rotating tetrahedrons, right?
ripping
your aura apart.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Well, by the time the end of the workshop came, here was Ken, and then Ken can tell his own story about Droomvelo, but Droomvelo wanted Ken to, because Ken's a really great writer, to write his life story, and Droomvelo's father forbid him to do that. "I don't want that guy writing your book." Why would he say that, right? It was strange. But by the end of the workshop, or shortly after, Droomvelo fired Ken as the host, like hosting and bringing people together for his workshops.
Why, because of you?
Probably.
You could see him.
I could see him.
Yeah, we have this saying, Andrea's always right about people. It takes some time for them to reveal themselves. But pretty much sometimes we'll disagree in the beginning, and
he's really a nice guy.
I'd say at least 95% of the time it turns out to be correct. So.
Yeah. Well, over the years with the whole Droomvelo thing, we had people who would come in and they were doing these workshops, and there'd always be something really strange about it. Something would come up, and then there was this whole group of people that we met in Sedona when he was in there, and he turned out to be a complete strange guy. Like, didn't pay people, was very greedy, was nasty. I don't want to really gossip about it. I'm just saying that there was an element of his being, of whatever he came here to be, which, we have a short time here today, and I can go into what is this reality that we're in. And the Melchizedeks have a very distinct thing that they're doing here, and they're part of the parasitical group of controlled, structured, religious, domination. And see, I got to witness that. I got to.
That essentially means king priest, right?
Yeah, king priest,
Yeah.
the king and the line of the king and the line of the priest mixed together in a, tetrahedron. And see, there was no accident that I got to experience what he did with his wife at the time, right? This is not a judgment. It's just I happen to always get to be in the right place at the right time to see what I need to see. So then it strikes me on a different pathway, right? So then, and then Ken, who was going to make his whole life about being with Drumvalo and hosting him and everything, it was just immediately cut off. And then we're on our path together. And one of our paths, right from the beginning, is we were robbed. We had our car stolen. We had a bunch of gemstones in the car.
Right, Ken was in the gem business at the
Ken
time.
was in the gem business at the time. I had just bought some gems because Ken recommended, and we had the car stolen.
Yeah.
It was fascinating because here we were on our first sales trip, and I get up in the morning and I go, "Where's the car?" He says, "It's out in the street." I said, "No, it's not." This is out in the neighborhood near Portland, out in this town called Troutdale. A few hours later, the police called us. They'd found it, but a lot of the good stones were missing and up.
Right.
But it's interesting because before, it was actually a day or so after.
This is the early 90s at this point.
Yeah,
right?
this is 92. The interesting thing about it was, again, there was this man, I don't remember his name, but Gary Batten said, "You need to phone him," because we were actually wondering what happened to the car. This is before the police called. Yeah. And this guy got on the phone. I remember his first name was Frank, and he was a well-known psychic. And he said, his first words out of his mouth, "I don't know who the two of you guys are, but you have got every single demon after you right now." He said they're in droves. They're trying to stop you. They're just doing whatever. He says, "I've never seen anything like this." And then he was doing all kinds of protection things, and then after that's when the police called and said they'd found our car. So that's just a story, but that's another one of those windows where somebody comes in, never talked to Frank ever again.
You're right.
Yeah. It was just one of those moments like, this is who you guys are. You've got every demon and anybody who's used, like, it's like the mafia, right? So the good guys are in town, and the mafia wants everybody to know, get them. There's a thing on their heads, So that's kind of the feeling that I had from that. So, 94 we went to Hawaii, and I'm just briefly just going over certain things, and those kind of moments are when you're given a piece to the puzzle, when you're given at the next stage, the next step, you're learning things, you're getting what you're here for. Ken was starting to study law. He was talking to people about law. When we were in Hawaii, we met with all the elders. We learned all about the Hawaiian sovereignty movement. There was 376 sovereign groups then. We met all these different guys who said they were in the lineage of Kamehameha, that they were the great-grandson and they were the rightful king and all this kind of stuff. So
let's back up, or I guess it's around this time, but when was it that you and Ken made the agreement that you would make your focus on the inner work and he would make his focus on the outer work? I mean, it's kind of everything that you've described so far is, accessing that inner authentic being, that self, which you're both about. Obviously, you both do both.
Yeah.
But,
we both do that. I think it's just when Ken got more, when he was starting in the whole law.
in the law, yeah.
Yeah, and we used to hold meetings all the time in Hawaii, and we met a lot of the elders and things like that. And he was just learning a lot, and but he was more proficient to talk about it than anybody, and he was helping people and stuff like that. But I think when we started PanTerra, that was, he was going to focus on that. I'm focusing on the inner work. There's so many other stories in between that, and there's so many, but they're all key people. Like, we got involved in the Keylontic science, and that was around 2000 or something, 2001. That opened up a huge vortex of stuff. It was sort of the beginning of what Ken calls came up with the name, the clothing of the realm, right?
Right.
So we had to go and meet, whether it was Melchizedek or whatever group of parasitical entities that had embodied here, that had, the mafia of of the world, right?
Yeah.
And we had to go and meet them all. It was one after another.
The day of my daughter's wedding, and
Yeah.
give me the opportunity to correct myself.
Yeah. So, and then there's a whole, Ken's told a lot of these stories, so don't really feel like I need to tell stories, but there's the whole thing that happened on the Y2K, and there was things, going into the whole Keylontic science. There's another guy right now who's really come out with it, and he said the woman Ashiana Dean was, not such a great person. I had a personal experience of her that was devastating to my being. Actually, it was really, really horrible experience. But I had to go through it. It's like we go through these things all the time. But
Well, it's both for self-growth, for learning in this life, but also, you've run into these collectives to give them all the opportunity, basically, to choose life, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's good that you say choose life, because there was the next person in the lineup was my key mentor. And I don't really, it's a really hard story for me to tell, because after he passed away in 2012, studied with him for 4 years, but I did his process for at least 8 years. An extraordinary being, not like anything or anybody that's ever been here, who had a very specific purpose, who taught things that nobody else, in my opinion, has ever talked about. It was all, this is where I learned all about the New Age. New Age was a complete bait and switch. It was so parasitical. He was just an extraordinary being who could interdimensionally travel. It would be very hard for me to explain that in less than an hour of who he was and what he did. So the process that I embarked on was about self-forgiveness and going very, very deeply into all the patterns, all the belief systems. We had to do a lot of writing where we would start, and I did a film once in PanTerra about the self-forgiveness.
Let's rewind a little bit. We're talking about who your mentor is.
Okay, so this man had been a police officer, or a police detective actually, and he was fascinated with the afterlife, and he was fascinated with how this reality works, and obviously he was not like anybody else. One day I may tell the whole story of how he came to be who he was. It's too long, but it really deserves that attention. So started studying with that work, which was all about self-honesty and self-forgiveness. He could interdimensionally travel, or he had somebody he trained to do that, who could talk to everybody who was on the other side, who were doing his process that he taught them, and that they would free themselves up with self-forgiveness and self-honesty, self-forgiveness. So it's a whole process of actually writing out what you notice about yourself. Like, oh, I, judge people for this, or I hate myself for that, or I can't stand that person when they do this, or whatever. And you'd write them out, and then you'd forgive yourself for having those thoughts and beliefs. But the amazing thing was when you start doing the process, you get to the next level, and then the next level, and then the next level. And it could be hours where you're sitting writing based on one point. And you'd open up history, or you'd open up when you were a child in school, or other people that you forgot about. And it's a really transcendent, amazing process. I'm not giving it any what it really deserves, because it is an amazing process, because you change in it. And then there's the commitment statements after that you make, that when if I see myself go into that pattern, that belief, that structure, I stop it, I change, I don't do that.
Self-remembering, yeah.
Yeah, self-remembering. Very, very deep. But there was a lot of other stuff going on. So we had an inner circle, and there was all this communication with other beings who were on the other side.
So what is the other side? If you want to get into that just a little
people
bit.
who had died, let's just put it that way. People who had...
And were stuck somewhere.
Oh, yes. Yeah, they were stuck somewhere. And this is where I spent, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands of hours listening to recordings of people talking about their experience, of what happened to them when they were in this reality, passed through, were stuck in the other reality. And what we learned was this whole loop that people had been in for eons and eons of time, and then the other side was just as imprisoned as this side.
In a containment field, yeah.
Yeah, and in a containment field, it was hierarchical. There was the Anunnaki, Anu, there was Marduk and all those guys, but there was a lot of other things. And there was people who were telling channels what to say. They had a script, or religious people. Like they had, everything was canned here. It was all controlled. There was no way out. And people would go in and they'd die, and then they'd go around in the circle. But what happened was that this man went into that reality, and he started teaching people, or disembodied spirits, how to forgive themselves so they could get out of that loop. It was a continual loop, and there was just thousands of recordings of all these different people who had told their story and had freed themselves from that experience. So that was very intricate. I'm not giving it justice, because that was 7 years of my life doing that. But at one point, this gentleman who lived across the pond told me that he would really like me to come over and bring Ken.
Yeah, and PanTerra is founded when you're doing this whole process. You guys founded in 2001, yeah? Yeah. So. Yeah,
I was doing that. There was a time period in there where I was kicked out of the U.S. I'm not a U.S. citizen, and I had to go to Mexico for 2 years. So I was all alone, and I was doing that process every day for 8-10 hours a day. And I was talking to people around the world and coaching them and doing stuff in this group. So anyway, he said, I'd really like for you to come and visit, and and you have to know that I just really looked up to him, and he was like my mentor, and it was just, it was. So I got on a plane. I actually had to lie to get back in the States, and then get on a plane, cross the pond, and he came to pick me up at the airport, and he looked really bad. His face was pale and everything, and I've always knew him like me, right? He was very gruff with people, and he could just really dig into people. He was like, and everybody was whoa when he talked to them, because he could read as well. Like he could really read into people, and he'd say, "You're lying," and things like that, you know. So when I got to the airport, we got in the car, and then all of a sudden, he just burst out crying. He just cried and cried, and I'd been on the plane for like 24 hours, and I was kind of in shock. And he got on the phone with another member who was there, and he said, "I'm just so embarrassed. Andrea's here now." And I said, "Why would you be embarrassed?" You know, and he said, "Well, I am, because it was, you know, I really wanted to meet you, and I asked you to be here, and there's some things I want to tell you." And so we drove all the way to where he was living, which was a fair, I don't know, 3 or 4 hour drive. And we talked a lot about this existence and what was happening, and that's a whole interview in itself. Mm-hmm. Just all his interdimensional experiences, how he was able to hold other beings inside of his field, mm-hmm. So they didn't have to go through the loop. He used to meet kids who had died in hospitals and stuff, and they would go into his, he called it his body, but you know, it's his universe or whatever. So he had a lot of other beings there with him. And I know that might really, people can't understand that, but if you've actually done this work, it makes a lot of sense. Because nobody wanted to get caught in the loop.
Right, the what some would call the reincarnation trap, the light tunnel.
Well, it was interesting that you mentioned that, because just before I went to see him, about a month and a half before, he made this announcement. He said, "Reincarnation is over. Mm-hmm. People don't need to go into the loop." They had removed a lot of the systems. Now the systems were all these like channels and psychics and archangels, and see, they're all just mental systems. They weren't actual beings. Mm-hmm. And yes, they were entrapped into a lot of beings, but they weren't real.
Inserts.
Yeah, they were holographic inserts. And that's what we learned a lot, was the holographic inserts of all these systems. Like they would come through and talk, and they go, "Hello, I am the system of Archangel Michael. I'm here to put the thing on them so that they'll never wake up." And see, everything was like the opposite of what people think. You know, all religions, and even Jesus came through one time, and he's like, I got caught. Yeah. You know, I never went to do that, and the next thing I know, I'm on this cross. You know, like, Jesus Christ. Yeah. So you know, I know that people are going to have to really expand themselves and put their belief systems away, but it was a very dynamic, incredible thing. So he came out and said, "Hey, you know, there's no more reincarnation. Mm-hmm. You when you die, you can go wherever you want. You're not caught in the loop. It's a long loop. That would take me hours to explain, hours and hours how it worked. Yeah. Studied for hours and hours. So anyway, get in the car, driving with him. The next day, we spent together. He said, "This is what I want to do with you, blah, 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 blah." He was telling me everything that while I was there, what I was going to do. And then the next day, I get this, you know, I was still trying to equalize from flying all that time and not sleeping, and that there was this, I'd woken up in the middle of the night, and I heard all this noise, and I heard cars going, and this is way out in the country, so it was kind of weird, and it seemed strange, but I went back to sleep. And next morning, this knock at the door, "Andrea, you got to get up." I'm probably going to cry. Yeah. And I said, "I can't. I'm really tired. I can't do it. I've been up all day and night." And they said, "No, you really need to get up." And I really didn't want to get up. And I remember crawling out of bed, coming into the living room, and everybody looked extremely sad. And I said, what happened? And they said, Bernard died last night. He had a heart attack. He's only 45, I think. Oh, I forgot one major part.
Yeah, that you had a conversation.
Yeah, well, that when I was going to bed, I said, I'll see you tomorrow. He says, I'll see you tomorrow. And then he looked at me and said, good luck with the robots.
Yeah, it's like he totally knew, right?
Yeah, he knew he was going to go. That's why he was waiting and waiting for me to get there.
But he felt like he needed to download certain things to you because he had looked up to you. You talk about looking up to him, but it sounds like he also...
Well, he knew the purity of my being. Right. And a lot of people, after he died, took it way off course. They wanted to make... They wanted to make money. They wanted to sell books. They wanted to do this. There was this... He had invented something, and somebody took the invention and they screwed with it. And everything that he did, his own children even sold him down the river.
The jackals come and dismember the body. Right?
Yeah, and so it was clear to me that he was waiting for me to get there, and I really toyed with that for a long time because I started trying to work with his children and the other people, and they all had this aversion to me. They were like, "Don't you tell us." And, most of them are in their 20s. I was in my 50s. And they actually kicked me out.
Right. After
After being there for 8 years, 2-3 times a week, sometimes every day, that whole time in this group, his daughter took me off the group. Was it a good thing or a bad thing? Was actually, so then I kind of went and just pushed it all away. But then the things kept coming back to me about how much value I've got out of that, what I learned about this existence. There are things about this existence that nobody knows. But the interesting thing is in between all that, the world starts opening up. All of a sudden, there's all these people going, oh, is it a crater? Is it a this? Is it a that? And taking apart all these belief systems that were clearly systems, okay? The Merkabahs and the Melchizedeks, and I just remember that my mentor, like one time, David, what's his name? David... The guy who thinks he was Edgar Cayce.
Oh, Wilcock.
Yeah. Well, my mentor hated him. And he didn't ever express that about anybody else. He was the most loving person. He goes, I hate that guy. He is not fucking Edgar Cayce. I've met Edgar Cayce and he's not him. And Edgar Cayce would never do what he's saying, and he'd never say that. He was actually a good guy, but he got slammed. So, the whole thing that I was learning about all this work was that this was a giant lie. Everything was a lie. Everything.
Yeah. The lives. Yeah.
All the beliefs. Everything. So, so it took me quite a while to. The interesting thing is he kept saying, we got to get Ken down here. We got to get Ken down here. And in one of his contracts that he was doing with his invention, Ken worked on it for him and just faxed it to him. That's when they had fax machines back then. And Bernard just went like this and threw it to the side, and his daughter went, aren't you going to read it? And he goes, Ken did it. I don't need to read it. It's perfect. Everything Ken does is perfect. And he had so much admiration, and I just knew that. And Ken really, really tried when these people took over his invention to intervene and do stuff, and they ended up stealing everybody's money, and it was just horrendous. But there was not much we could do about it. So
this is 2012,
no, this was, he died in 2013.
Okay.
So it was exactly 12 years ago on August 8th.
And this is really when PanTerra is starting to gain some traction. Ken
Yeah.
did How It All Fits Together in 2012. You're
Yeah.
just finishing up with Bernard.
And that's a lot of his information that I embodied by listening to thousands of hours of his talking with other beings and expressing what this reality really is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I know like a lot of people have all these beliefs and ideas about what they think this reality is, but I was confronted with things and got to see them myself and to know it and to be it, to take it in and experience it. So I know that when a lot of people come into PanTerra and they go, oh, I channel Archangel Michael, or I'm part of David Wilcox, my best friend, or whatever. I've been through all those things, and they've been taken apart, and what they really truly are, which are all mechanisms to keep enslaving humanity, right? And see, Bernard took that on, and it was, it killed him in the end, because it just took a lot of his energy to work with it. There's still many things I've got in the storage that I really need to re-listen to, because now we're in a whole different reality, and there was things that he said back then that just made no sense to me. Mm-hmm. But now it would. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that everything that he has said has come out exactly like it has. Mm. He said he was always telling everybody the AIs come in and they're going, and like he was saying, get a good job, because you're going to be easily displaced. Like, find something where you're going to be okay. Everything he has said has come to pass. And it's fascinating. So, my life has had a very, 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 very specific path with Ken, is that we are taking down the artificial world.
Right, it's just going through and breaking down the false reality constructs.
I mean, I've had people threaten my life. When I was with the Ashiana Dean in Ireland, mm-hmm. she had a bunch of people spit on me. She said I was from the Phantom Matrix, and
you were a magenta. Yeah,
and I was, and all this crap. That depressed me like crazy. It's been a very, very, very precise path, and the whole thing of PanTerra was to rebuild a world that, as Werner said, works for everybody, equality, walking into life. That was my mentor's, he came up with that. We're all going to walk into life. Mm-hmm. What I discovered in that whole process is the automatonic nature of all the programs and things inserted into people and into their brains. And interestingly, that Ken spent all his time in the Gurdjieff community in the 70s and 80s. And Gurdjieff's whole work is about the automaton,
Right.
And people having to face that in themselves. And it's a very, very complex, difficult process to look at yourself in the mirror and say, okay, is this an automated program? Am I being my real self? Not too many people do that. So one of the things to end up with here, because I'm probably running on time, but Bernard said our process would be 14 years to walk into life. He died when I was like 8 years into it, I think. I spent a couple more with the group and trying to write out all the stuff and do the next lessons. And actually, I pressed them so much they had to write lessons for me. They were getting really behind, and they weren't that interested anymore because he wasn't there cracking the whip. And but he said that the last few years would be about the physical body. It was going to be about the autonomic nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know, people electrocute themselves when they have thoughts. That I always remember him saying that they have all this stuff going through their nervous system, and that's where all the programs are.
Mm-hmm.
And that when we would free ourselves from certain programs, you know, your body would change, and you'd have pain. Like sometimes you have pain in an arm for a couple of days because there'd be a program stuck in there. So that's when I decided to embark, after he was gone, after I left that whole thing, on the autonomic nervous system, the trauma work. And actually, that is probably a lot deeper than everything else that I've done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is difficult. It's painful. It is. You have to be consistent. It requires self-honesty, self-regulating. It's a really different path, and it's difficult. So since I started on that almost 3 years ago,
Really deep diving. I mean,
Yeah.
you're aware of
yeah, I was
some
very
of these
aware of it. But I
things.
mean, doing Dr. Amy's work, doing Irene Lyon's work. I've also done some somatic work with this woman from England, who she's in Adelaide, Australia now. It's like somatic work. Been working with Ariel Schwartz, who's a PhD in psychotherapy, because there's different angles to all of it. How to calm the nervous system, how to regulate it, how to get programs and systems out of the physical body. And that was the whole process that I was doing with my mentor, was that we started in the different bodies, and that we would get at the end into the physical body. And then once you did that, you could be totally free.
Mm-hmm.
And so just to let the members know, and to let people who are watching this know, that maybe I have been kind of edgy a lot, because I'm going through those programs. And they're not fun.
Yeah.
You go through anger, you go through irritation and anxiety, and you're going in deep pain. Like some nights just wake up incredible pain in the body, stored there from traumatic experiences when I was a child and growing up. Everybody has them. It takes a huge amount of effort and courage to face that stuff. It's not fun. It isn't. There's nothing fun about it. But there is these moments. Like I had a private session with a guy who's a somatic practitioner, probably one of the best. And I have this thing called high intensity global activation, which means that you go into this really weird nervous state where it just doesn't stop and it doesn't turn off. And it usually happens in the middle of the night. And he can help to restructure that and help, I had one session with him. That's all I had the wherewithal for. I could not believe how I felt after. I have never felt like that. I felt totally free, happy. My body was happy. I just remember wow, if I could feel like this all the time, I'd be in heaven. And it really comes down to, this is what the parasite has done to the humanity of people, that we just can't be in our bodies because there's just so much pain. There's so many lies, so much deception, that it's terrorizing to be in our bodies, because there's so many memories, there's so many weird things that have happened in our childhood, whether you had alcoholic parents or you were sexually abused, or the body keeps the score. It never leaves your body. You can feel it coming in and then going out. takes a huge amount of commitment to doing this. But that's part of what I consider the 14-year process of working with my mentor. So this stuff is real.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, there's a lot of people who do kind of nice things, and, you know, that's not the real work.
Right.
The real inner work is being self-honest, is going one step at a time through whatever, whether it's a belief system, whether it's a pain in your neck, whether it's a relationship with another person that you can't stand and you got to work through it, or some emotional baggage from when you're 3 years old. You got to go and you have to walk through them all. That's part of being present here in this reality. Now, if you can imagine, you got 8 billion people who aren't like that. And they are running and spinning all kinds of programs and ego, a lot of ego. And the AI is zooped up.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't talk about the mind consciousness system. That's a you know, we can do that in the next one. The mind consciousness system is everything that I studied. It is everything trapped in the mind. It's all the systems and beliefs that are stuck in your mind, and people think are real, and then they project out of them thinking that's real. And now it's zooped up. Now people are adding things like neural links into the mind consciousness. The mind consciousness system is what's driven by the mind, which is an artificial reality that they use us to project. We're the virtual reality projection units. So, you know, all this predictive programming, like, let's show this, you know, there's Trump going up the escalator, and then you have that impression in your head, and then you got millions of people creating that, and then they make it real. And that's basically how we are used to create reality here. Instead of being free, see, freedom absolute is then not having all those attachments.
Well, that's where we get, you know, will, purpose, and intent, where we start to embody our authentic self, so that we aren't just projecting other people's beliefs that they're putting into the causal realm, keeping us stuck in the effects, and projecting our own prison. You know, that's what the elite's got us doing. And so when everything that you've been talking about, we talk about substantiation of your being, is taking that back, that driver's seat, and with our real self.
Yeah, it's about building that, not getting more stuff for your mind. Yeah. Which is what, you know, Elon Musk and all these guys do. You know, they just their minds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're, you know, it's like if you've seen the movie Lawnmower Man.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, but
well, go watch
nice,
it.
Cheesy B movie to watch.
Yeah, it's people are in their minds on steroids, and that's, you know, and the thing is that we need people like me and Ken and the other people who are grounded in their bodies, creating a real reality that makes sense. And one of the biggest things in my mentor's reality was the money system, and that's a 3-part show. You know, like how the money system works to keep us completely enslaved. And we keep creating the need for more, and we're in this endless loop, and with this system that's doesn't make any sense. It's the go around the musical chair syndrome, where the chair is always being taken away, and everybody's trying to find one, and there's not enough when there's plenty in this world. So that's the biggest mind consciousness, mind control system in the human existence right here.
Yeah, well, there's the people not having enough to survive, but then there's the flip side of that is having it way more than you need, and not feeling like you have enough because it's totally
having
empty.
Thousands of dresses in the closet, and they still have the tags on, and they're 10 years old. You've never warned them. I mean, there's thousands of people like that.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
the thing that's really disturbing to me is how people never talk about all the people who don't have anything here on this planet. And there's all these people who have way over that much. And I'm not talking about communism and socialism. It just doesn't make any sense that there's so many slaves to get you your whatever at Walmart. There's millions and millions and millions of slaves. And that is part of the mind consciousness system out of whack. Everybody should have a life here. It's
just self-focus is what it is.
Yeah, it's selfishness, self-focus. I got to keep up with the Joneses. So that's the major consequence.
It's also being a robot where you're stuck in these systems that are perpetuating that, and you're not taking a look at it, so you become culpable.
Yeah. Instead of looking at, why did I just order that thing on Amazon when I felt really insecure?
Yeah.
A lot of people, even Gabor Mate's talked about his shopping addiction. That's a big one. There's a lot to unfold, a lot to unveil. This was just a preliminary explanation and a very fast track of my life, but it's been very purposeful. And, to be in PanTerra, you really need to work on yourself.
Yeah.
Or else you won't understand this. You need to study what Ken has put together. There's nothing like it in the world. There is nothing close to what Ken has put together as far as the law. Not even close. The guys who are out there selling their things, well, a lot of them have stolen it from Ken, and then they've sized it down because people are too stupid to study.
Right, just give me my certificate and, and my expatriation notice. And
we're here for freedom absolute. Well, what is it that stops you from studying? What is it for you to not sit down and do something that's going to be beneficial to you? Well, that's all the trauma. That's all the programs. That's the procrastination. That's the I'm not good enough, or I just can't be bothered, or who cares anyway, and I'm going to die anyway, or whatever. There's all those things. And so you need to work on yourself. There is no excuse. Mm-hmm. Yes, I get kind of upset about people and their excuses because they joined here to make a difference and do something with their lives, and they're not doing it. There's only a few who are really doing it, and they do all the work as well. Like Travis here. Travis does about 5,000 jobs here, plus interviewer.
I
puts everything together, does the cameras, does everything.
Use my film school background in journalism.
If we had 100 Travises, we'd have mastered the world by now. It's our potential is so great, and where we're living at is about 2% of that, if that. So that's part of the work here. We put together this whole thing, a contract with self, in these groups so that people would work on themselves. And it just turned into a gossip festival, or people trying to get other people to do something different than what we were doing here, or, excuses. And we had to take that whole thing apart because it wasn't working. It just, people weren't doing it for the right reasons.
Well, that was another thing I was going to kind of ease into, is these waves of how PanTerra has grown, going through waves of people and refining, we call it gem mining, or, really spiritual progress is all a purification process. So you could almost say that we had to go through not so quality people who really polarized early on in the mid 20-teens, and just waves of creating this purification, filtration process is really what we've been doing to preserve the integrity of this private jurisdiction.
Yeah. But most people, let's be honest, folks, you're hedging your bets for money, and you're not doing what you came here to do. If you actually read all the people's applications, because I read every single one of them. Everybody came here, I really want to make a difference. I really want to change this world. I want to learn how to be free. I want to learn how to have a land-based community and teach other people. I want to grow my own food. I want to do all this. Well, what are you doing now? Are you doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, we've had the biggest interruptus, which is this whole process that we've had to do, which was my original thing when I was a young girl. You're going to change the economic system. Well, it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I've been working on it my entire life. What's coming out now is truly unbelievable. But those things had to come out.
Mm-hmm.
We had no idea that it would take this long. But when you think about it, how can you take a whole economic system apart with a bunch of crooks?
Yeah. It's just a slow process.
Yeah, it's a massive process.
We're starting to see real progress. But
Yeah.
people are going to run into the what we talked about with money. As I think the world is coming into, at least for the West, it's to be seen. We're going to be that difference for the poorer parts of the world. But at least for the West is going to see a huge economic boom, I think, here in the next few years. And people are not going to know, it's going to destroy a lot of people if they haven't substantiated or know what to do with it,
Mm-hmm.
And so, be careful what everybody wishes for. And there's no when this happens to start doing something. It's right now. What percentage, a lot of the people in FA are kind of don't get all of this background with the society, but what percentage of the people that we have now do you think are doers, who are doing things?
12%.
12%. So our work is very hard.
Remember I told you all my mentors are really into statistics.
But it's amazing what we do with that 12%, right?
Yeah, and I said to the one team the other day that actually can me, Travis, and Jolly do about 80% of the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as a judgment or you're bad, but why? Why did you come here if you're just going to sit on the sidelines and watch? It actually deters us from doing our jobs, especially people who don't do anything that ask stupid questions, and then we spend our time answering them, and they don't really give a shit about what the answer is. They just want to be heard or something like that. Or all these other people who are off doing things on the sideline trying to take our material and do something else with it. It's distracting. It isn't on purpose to what our intention was, our declaration of intention, who we are, what our goals are for humanity. I am a person who abhors the fact that any human being should starve to death, or any child should be a slave picking rocks in Congo or whatever. That's what drives me.
Yeah.
That's what drives me. So if you're not honoring that about the founder and co-founder of this organization, of this society, why are you here? I don't get it. I don't get all the people who hide out, don't say a word, just watch like we're on some TV show and there's the Ken and Andrea show.
Yeah.
Let's tune in and see what they're doing to it. Hey,
Yeah.
it's not okay with me. It is not okay. I would rather that you go and do something else than to be this bystander and have your opinions and whatever. My mentor was exactly the same. Actually, he would have thrown you out a long time ago.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, that if you weren't producing constructively and bettering yourself, you were a weight to the whole group.
Yeah, that's
and
how
we
it is.
have infinite patience, and I answer 1,000 questions every day.
Yeah.
But how many of those questions are put into action, and that they change themselves? If the least you could do is to take some trauma classes to find out why you're a procrastinator or a hider or a watcher, or you just can't do anything. at least do that for yourself and find out what happened to you, that you're not a living being who's creating into this reality.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should clarify here for the FA people that we're talking about our full members who have gone through the rigorous process of the application, studied the gem material now that's required, and written their video series, watched all our videos, 200 hours of videos of the background of PanTerra and where we're going, and written an essay. You know, it's very involved, and they say,
but it
they
involves
make that
all
commitment.
of us working
Yeah,
too to support you.
We support
and
them.
then you just dump it at the end. That's not right.
Yeah, we're not necessarily talking about the gem members who,
Yeah.
you know, you're just getting familiar with everything and you're paying your $33 a month, you know, for Patreon, Substack, and that's fine. Take your time. You guys, you know, go at your own pace. But for those who made that commitment, you know, it's a hard thing. But that's one of the things that really attracted me here is the idea of a private jurisdiction, because I know how wacky people are out there, and I don't want them coming into my private space.
Yeah. We want people who
quality
are
people
putting their effort and energy into working to, you know, like the amount of work that the four of us do here every day is quite outstanding. But it's just because it needs to get done. But there's a qualitative experience of when you're doing that, like that you're getting a lot accomplished. That's what life is supposed to be about, not avoidance and procrastination. Just is the way it is. That's why sometimes I get really pissed off. You know what? I can't help myself. It's just in my creation with Ken. What we wanted were people who wanted to make a difference, to change this world. We have the tools. We have the law. We can do it. There's just nothing stopping us but just reasonable people who just don't believe it, or they keep tripping us up or whatever.
Yeah. Who do you think's going to do it?
Nobody.
Someone else is going to do it for you.
Nobody's
no one's
going to do it
for
No,
you.
nobody. And
you are the Calvary.
we are the most resourceful people. Ken is the most incredible creator. He is always finding something. Yes, of course we're going to be attacked. Of course we're going to be tripped up, because that's the nature of this world. The elite, the activated people into those parasitical things. That's what they're programmed to do. So. That would be something else that I'd want to talk to, how to remain true to yourself, how to remain creating in the face of all that. It's not easy sometimes. Sometimes we swear a lot, but...
sometimes we get a little discouraged.
Yeah. But in the end, this is what human beings are meant to be like. Not...
real.
Yeah, real, not just sitting on the couch drinking and watching a stupid TV show, you know. That all has a time and place, but the thing is we're creator beings. We came here, I started off with, this is how I have a window that's open. I've had those windows come to me to continually remind me that I'm here as a creator being to make a difference, to bring things here that are honor life, that all life is honored, to bring back the systems that work, like the water systems and the food systems and things that aren't going to poison people. Everybody says, "Oh, I know permaculture, and I know this, and well, what are you doing? Yeah. Are you implementing it? Are you putting it into action?"
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I mean, building things is really important, is actually putting things into action.
Wow, what a novel idea.
I know, what a novel idea, but a lot of people, they create all this stuff. We talk about the Enneagram, and they get stuck in the mind at the gathering tools and material, and they don't engage the physical, or if they do, then they get stuck with the being, which is the emotional body, and that's where the trauma work comes in.
Actually, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
Truly, human beings are so programmed, they're so systematized, they're so dumbed down. All those words, things that happen to you when you're in elementary school, whatever, indoctrination, robotized, So they actually, a lot of people don't actually know that when they're doing something in the physical as opposed to what they think they're doing in their minds. Well, I do that because they think in the mind that they're doing it, but they're not actually physically doing it. Actually, we spent a lot of time with my mentor about this, and I realized that people actually think they're doing something, but they're not.
Right.
That's the difference. The real inner work has you come back into your body so that you know that you're doing something physically, that you are accomplishing something. Mm-hmm. I know that might sound really silly to a lot of people, but it's actually true. And that's why it's actually a preparation to put one of those things on you, and then you go into the
Go into the metaverse.
And you go in the metaverse, and you're like, oh, I'm doing something, but it's just your mind. Do you know what? This is the metaverse right now. We're in the metaverse right now. That would take me a lot to explain, because that's what I learned, was all the systemization of this realm, that we were in this kind of metaverse. Mm-hmm. And it was about coming back in the body. That's the beauty of the somatic work, is that you're feeling your body, you're feeling your breath, you're feeling all the pain, you're here as a being walking through life. Sounds really simple, but I have watched thousands of women struggle, mostly women that are in these classes and stuff, struggling with just moving, just doing something.
Right.
So that's the quantitative difference. It's not being in your head. It's called dissociation. People are dissociated. Mm-hmm. They're entertained. They're entertainment. So, the best thing you can do is start getting into your body and forgiving yourself for when you weren't.
Right.
With all your beliefs and whatever.
Yeah, I know I have a long way to go on that one, so working on it.
We all have a long way to go, but the thing is to be self-honest about it.
Yeah.
People, I'm in my body. What are you talking about? Going to the gym every day.
Right.
Yeah, but that can be systemized too.
Yeah,
that can be like,
tonic.
oh, I gotta go because that guy on the video said this, and he said if I do this, then I'll blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, being present in every moment, in every curl, or
yeah,
whatever.
feel it, be it.
So that's good. So that's where PanTerra is going. Is we have a wonderful plan. We have a master plan that needs a new iteration, but it can be found. It's from 2017, I think. But so much to build. Ken's got that blueprint. You've got, where you're going with the inner work. But it's going to take people to do that. So maybe we can talk. FA Freedom Absolute is a really cool new endeavor to reach this broader audience of the world, get them familiar with what we're doing. Maybe we can talk a little bit about where we're going with your part of Freedom Absolute now that we've laid the groundwork. Just talking to some of the people that you have been researching in the health fields, the esoteric fields, inner work fields like that. Articles, any of these new ideas you're finding, or pre-existing. So there's a lot to come.
Yeah, and what the biggest words right now that are kind of coming out in the field of all the somatic people and all that is connection. That if you aren't connected to this, then you're not creating. Like, connection is the biggest thing in the somatic world. Being connected, this where you were connected to your mother's eyes when she was loving you as a baby, or you're connected to the trees or the
other
people. Well, yeah. That's the main thing. That's the key. And most people think that they are, but they're not. They're in their little worlds, and they're not being honest with a lot of the people around them and how they really feel or whatever. And this is about opening up and being connected. The world is connected. The trees are connected. The animals are connected. Human beings are suppressed and depressed and want to win. And that's what, with the money system, everybody wants to have the money so then they don't have to be connected. That's really what it's about. Then, well, at least I can survive and I can get the food and I can do all that. I need money to do that, and then I won't have to be really connected.
I don't have to be relying on anybody.
Yeah,
right?
I don't have to rely on anybody.
Yeah, well, there's certain things money can't buy, and you'll figure that out. So,
and maybe this whole thing has happened for one certain reason. Like, the whole COVID thing is that people weren't connected anymore. Like they were all, and that doesn't work. Human beings need to be connected.
Real demarcation point here where people really had to look at everything. And
nothing is done by accident. That was all there for people to really experience, and yeah, it wasn't pretty. But you would think that after all that and everything, and you see so many people dying and everything, that people would go, I don't want that ever to happen again, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to get connected in, I'm going to make friends, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to do whatever it takes.
Well, that was the splitting
That's
point.
the line
Demarcation.
of going into life or not. So we've always said that that's what we're doing. So no more hiding out. It's either you're in or you're not. We're going to raise the bar higher. And it's for your own good. It's not because we're Nazis, or it's that's we've declared. Read the Declaration of Intention. It's about life, walking into life. Life means connecting with people. Life means doing things that support other people's life. Over half of the world is not in good shape. People don't have a life, So that's unacceptable in my mind.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to this. I've really enjoyed Freedom Absolute, this new expansive phase of Freedom Absolute and PanTerra, of connecting with other creators, other experts, people in certain fields. So looking forward to see what we have.
And it's going to collaboration, from competition to collaboration.
Right.
Stop competing with other people. It's about finding everybody's a universe in themselves, and they have all kinds of things that can help. So it's like you can pull all the puzzle pieces together and create something real. You don't have to compete.
We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Not everyone's got everything 100%, including us. So we're there to put all the right pieces and keep gem mining, and onward we go. So
yeah.
So thank you guys. Looking forward to future deep dives into these topics. And
that wasn't even a deep dive. That was a shallow dive.
That was just a shallow overview. So thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next one.